My name is Sarah Gustafson. Today, we are going to be talking about the cognitive load theory, as well as the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. As part of the cognitive load theory, we will discuss the architecture and the load conditions. As part of the cognitive theory of multimedia learning, we will talk about its model and the assumptions related. First, let's discuss the architecture of cognitive load theory. Cognitive load theory assumes that a learner uses what is called a working memory. The working memory can handle 7 elements of information at any given time, 2 to 4 pieces of brand new information at a time. In order to retain information from the working memory to the long-term memory, the learner uses what are called schemas. Schemas are a structure that a learner may use to organize information. Another way to think of it as labeling folders to be stored in long-term memory. As a person takes in new information through the working memory, schemas are formed and then stored in long-term memory banks. Research shows that long-term memory may have no limitations at all. And it is said that we can add to our long-term memory our entire lives. Another important aspect of cognitive load theory are the load conditions. There are 3 different types of load conditions. Intrinsic load, the number of interacting elements. As discussed earlier, working memory can only handle about 7 elements at a time, only 2 to 4 if the information is brand new. The second, extraneous load, is the amount of extra information or inhibitory information, distracting the learner from the primary information. And the third load, germane load, the amount of cognitive effort the learner puts in trying to absorb new information. Intrinsic load and extrinsic load are additive. Therefore, as instructional designers, it's important for us to manage intrinsic load, minimize extraneous load, and maximize germane load, or the effort put in by the learner to learn new information. Next, let's discuss the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. We will talk about the assumptions as well as the model related to this theory. Let's begin with the assumptions. There are 3 basic assumptions related to the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. They are dual channels, meaning a learner can receive information both using their eyes and their ears at the same time, through words and through pictures. The next assumption is limited capacity. As discussed with the cognitive load theory, working memory can only handle a limited amount of elements when learning information or receiving information. Likewise, in this theory, limited capacity means that each channel can only receive a certain amount of information at the same time. The third assumption is active processing, in which the learner is actively participating in the learning process. Active learning involves selecting relevant information, organizing the data, and integrating it in the long-term memory. Let's move on to the model of the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. The model begins with the multimedia presentation, in which a learner will see words or hear words and see pictures. Next, we move into the sensory memory, in which the learner uses both their ears and their eyes to receive information. Moving forward, this information enters the working memory, which is limited, as we discussed earlier. In this part of the model, we see that information can be exchanged between the dual channels. Finally, as information is selected and organized, it is integrated into the final stage, long-term memory. This concludes our lesson for today. Thank you for your time.